Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the latest polling from Mid-Bedfordshire, which is the seat which Nadine Dorries is supposed to be vacating at some point, and how it actually looks like Labour in pole position to take it, something I didn't think likely when Dorries announced her resignation. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So Mid-Bedfordshire is a bit of a funny bunny. When Nadine Dorries announced she was resigning with immediate effect, which she's still not done weeks later, both Labour and the Lib Dems went off to kick off the campaign. But I assumed it would really be a Lib Dem target. And people said, but Phil, Labour are campaigning too. It's like, yeah, but they also made a show of that in North Shropshire in 2021 and then basically let the Lib Dems have a clear run at it, who then delivered a famous victory in one of the safest Tory seats in the country. North Shropshire was a seat that has voted Conservative in every election for 2 centuries. Until Boris Johnson came along. I thought Mid-Bedfordshire would be the same sort of beast. And there were a couple of reasons for this, really. First of all, actually from Labour themselves. See, as soon as those 3 MPs all announced they were stepping down, I had an email from Labour asking me for donations for the campaign in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. I had a similar email asking for help with Selby and Aintree. Nothing for Mid-Bedfordshire. Nothing. Now, Selby is very local to me. It's not a very long drive from me. Fair enough. But Uxbridge, way further than Mid-Bedfordshire. It's the other side of London. Why email me for a donation for the campaign in Uxbridge and not the much closer Mid-Bedfordshire? And the emails went out before the resignations had taken place. So it had nothing to do with the fact that the other 2 resigned and Dorries hadn't actually resigned either. So that suggested to me that Labour weren't actually that serious. And then the second thing was the past election results. So, for example, you look at Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Southerners, election results, and you can see that the Conservatives have held it comfortably. But Labour always have a strong showing. So you can sort of see, look, if anyone's going to challenge the Tories, it's going to be Labour. You can look at it. They are in second place, but it's not like a really distant second place. The same was not true of Mid-Bedfordshire. If you look at their election results, they look much more similar to the sort of North Shropshire. Okay, not as safe, but still the same sort of seat. Labour in second place, sure. Lib Dems well behind them, yeah, absolutely. But in North Shropshire, that was the same. But the electoral reality was that a lot of those Conservatives might be upset with the Conservatives, but they're not going to vote for Labour. But this population of mostly Conservatives may well switch the Lib Dems in preference to an incompetent and corrupt Tory party. And that is what happened. So Mid-Bedfordshire to me looked like that. But then I started to see people pulling up details on like local election voting behaviour, and it looked like Labour had a bit more potential support than I thought. Still not enough to take it. Then some internal polls were leaked, and these were suggesting that Labour could not only present the strongest chance to the Tory candidate, but even win. So I was thinking, hang on a minute, what's going on here? So I was already changing my mind. And then some polling was published in the Telegraph at the weekend, right? An actual constituency poll, and it has Labour leading. But the details might reveal just why this is such a funny bunny, why Labour could take a seat which looks more like North Shropshire than you know, Uxbridge. And you look at past election results here. So in 2019, Labour got just under 22% of the vote. But in 2019, Labour's campaign was all over the place. But in 2017, when Labour ran a much better campaign, they got just over 28% of the vote. But the Conservatives with Nadine Dorries got nearly 62%. So there was no contest. I mean, Labour were left in the dust, really. But now look at this poll. It has Labour on 28%. Well, this is no better than the 2017 result. What is happening here is not a swing from the Conservatives to Labour at all. Because I still don't think the demographics would really allow for Labour to win just by converting Conservative votes. What is causing this poll that shows that Labour could win it is simply a catastrophic collapse in the Tory vote share. Utterly catastrophic. Labour are polling the same vote share as they got in the 2017 general election in this seat. But the Tories are only polling 24%, down from roughly 60% the last few elections. The Tory vote hasn't gone to Labour, though. It's just been spread out amongst literally anyone else. There's an independent candidate who seems to be a local councillor in the area, presumably is quite popular. the Lib Dems, of course, and Reform UK. Now, until Nadine Dorries actually resigns and that by-election is called, we won't actually get a list of candidates, so there'll be certain assumptions made in this poll. And if we assume Nadine Dorries still intends to resign, I mean, that's still a big if at the moment, then it will now mean an autumn by-election. So, maybe she'll plan to resign just out of maximum spite just before Parliament goes on recess. So it could be a while before we see the actual by-election. But if we assume that the independent councillor and Reform UK stand, and that the Lib Dems still pull away any Conservative votes that can be pulled from the Conservatives but have no chance of being diverted to Labour, this could be quite a remarkable by-election. At the moment, all the talk is of Labour. Can they overturn a roughly 20,000 majority in Selby and Ainsty? It's looking tight. It's looking incredibly close, but the polls say Labour can do it, and they're really going for it. Well, if Labour win in Mid-Bedfordshire, that'll be overturning a roughly 25,000 majority. And it would be even more concerning for Conservative MPs, because it's one thing to see massive swings towards the Lib Dems, as was the case in 3 notable 2021 by-elections. And maybe the case in Somerton and Frome in a few weeks. But the Lib Dems often do well in by-elections. They can focus on them and they can attract the protest vote. But they don't have the resources to target lots of seats in a general election. So their target list has to be very focused, and it's not going to include these sorts of seats. When everything's up for grabs at the same time, you can't spread yourself too thin. In addition, people voting Lib Dem know they're not voting for the government, possible kingmakers at best. But if the Conservatives see 2 huge majorities overturned by Labour, Selby and then Mid-Bedfordshire, and Labour are their most direct opponents, that will set the cat amongst the pigeons. Mind you, first things first, Selby and Ainsty is the big target for now, but it is worth just finally considering there's a reason why Rishi Sunak wanted to get all the by-elections out of the way early. There's a reason he was irritated when Nadine Dorries didn't resign straight away. The longer he leaves these by-elections, the more campaigning Labour can carry out. And this is not an even contest. Labour activists and MPs have been turning out in force to campaign for these by-elections. The Tories, by contrast, have had only their party chair, Greg Hans, is the only senior Tory who's been going out, a much smaller number of activists. There have been some relatively obscure Tory MPs turn out as well, to be fair to them, but none of their big names. They're not going out. It's really this simple. Labour are running better campaigns. They're getting more volunteers of both ordinary members and MPs, and not just backbench MPs, to turn out. The longer the campaigning goes on, the more of an impression Labour will make. Well, Nadine Dorries has denied Sunak his quick by-election in her seat. She's sticking 2 fingers up at him and saying, "After summer, you prick." I have a feeling that once these upcoming by-elections are out of the way, and they finish like 2 weeks this Thursday, I think Labour are probably going to be basically setting up camp in Mid-Bedfordshire for the rest of summer and into autumn. And if the polls are showing a Labour win now, you think to yourself, so is there anything on the... So if Labour are going to be campaigning harder than the Tories, if they can turn out more people, is there anything on the horizon that will allow the Conservatives to pull it back for autumn? No. Because otherwise, Rishi Sunak would have left these by-elections till autumn. He didn't have to rush them this quickly. No, there isn't. If anything, it will get worse. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.